just so that I, if something does go wrong, I can actually see it. And maybe it'll happen today that something will go wrong and I'll be able to correct it. I don't know. I never know
So,
what's going to happen.
so it's a matter of not just seeing that it works, but knowing why it works. Is that
Yeah, yeah,
okay?
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So uh, what it generated is not the most creative brief in the world. It basically took the problem statement and it reproduced it, but then it came up with some success metrics, which are kind of interesting, right? So we're talking about turnaround time and CSAT. I'm very customer focused, not so much internal staff focused. So I want to make sure that we're using our customers as our metric first. And so now we have a bit of a product brief. So what I'm going to do now is just to get the ball rolling, I'm going to ask the system, I'm going to ask Miro to create a story map that, and this is this I find to be very interesting. So I've selected the user story map. I'm going to ask it to, I don't know if it's, okay, well, it doesn't seem to be, uh, it doesn't seem to put it in context here, but that's okay. And so I'm just going to say, no, let's do, this is why I have pre-canned. So I'll just read this prompt to you. So what I'd like it to do is come up with an idea on a user story map that would, with post-its, that would describe how customers would use the product. Now, a user story map, if you haven't used one before or seen one, is just a way to visualize how a user would use a product. And it starts off with a goal. They need to achieve a goal. In this case, an online shopper wants to buy something, find a vitamin, add a product to the order, complete the purchase, and receive products. We've all seen that sort of e-commerce flow. Those are the big ticket activities. And in green these are the steps. So this is also called the backbone. The blue and the green are read left to right. And then the purple, which end up being sort of detailed tasks, are read vertically. These purple tasks become our user stories. And so what I'm doing, and then there's a way to split things into releases, but that's not so important right now. So what I'm doing is I'm asking Miro to generate a user story map that might, I'd come up with some ways that customers would use our product. And one of the things that I need to say here is do not write the tasks as a one-line user story, just name in titles. We don't need to write all the stories out. So I've asked it to use this, and this is always fun. I never know what it's going to generate. So let's see what it generates as a user story map. And by the way, Miro has a lot of different sidekicks, and there are a lot here at the bottom. It can generate mind maps and documents and images, and you can pay to create prototypes if you'd like. I've been using this for a long time, and it's quite powerful. So here you can see it is generating something, but it's not a user story map because these are the big ticket activities: access and verify identity, review current detail, request changes, confirm and submit, track and receive updates. That makes a lot of sense. These green post-its should be the backbone, which should be underneath the blues in order. And then I'm guessing that these yellows are going to be the tasks. It's jumbled them all up though. And so here's some advice for you. If it does this, don't worry about it. If you're working with a team, you're collaborating in Miro like this, maybe generate these just as ideas, like just generate this as some ideas to work with. And then of course you're going to fix it all and you might even change it, but it's come up with some good ideas here. So how are we going to authenticate? Using a code, using security questions. And then here's some ideas for comparing old and new and checking validation warnings and things like that. And here we're changing a phone number, changing a job title or a secondary contact, changing a street address. So how about this? How about I add this to the board, even though it's not perfect? Because what I'd like to do is really show you what wow, there's a lot of user stories there, what one user story might look like. So let me, instead of changing this in this much detail, I'm just going to make a copy of one of these. and I'm going to say, change a business address. And I'm just going to color it differently so we can see it. And I'm going to ask Miro now in the sidekick to generate what a one-line user story might look like. Now, what I find with AI is initially it's not great at writing user stories. I don't know what this is going to do, but I'm just going to select that guy. We've got one object selected. It's not pink, it's green. And this is something that's very important to do because if not, our user stories are kind of meaningless. So please ensure that the ASA describes a kind of user in their context. It's not, we would never want to see as a user. We'd always want to see a kind of person in some kind of context, like they may be changing their job title or role. They want to describes the goal they want to achieve, not a feature or a function that they want, but the goal they want to achieve. And the so that describes the benefit that they'll achieve. So let's just see what it comes up with. And I think let's see what it comes up with as a user story for this.
So I think it's very interesting that what you're telling AI here is probably the exact same thing that you tell humans when doing
It's
coding
exactly,
processes.
Mark, it's uncanny actually. It's just, I've basically taken all of my notes that I've collected over the years for coaching and I've applied them here. Let's just see how it did, because sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not. As a customer whose business is relocated within the same country, I want to update my account address so that, well, that's not bad actually. That's not bad at all. And within the same country, I'll tell you why that is. In the initial prompt, I don't know if you paid attention, but in the initial prompt, I said, let them change their address within sort of reasonable limits. If they're moving to a new country, maybe it needs to be approved internally. Or if they're, that might be something that we need to look at. But if we're within the same country, then it's probably okay to let this go through. So here we've got a user story now, and it's not a bad user story. And I'm just going to add it to the canvas. And now what I'm going to do is ask Miro to generate some acceptance criteria for this. And it's the same thing in Post-its. And there's a trend in the world today where people are using Gherkin for acceptance criteria. That's not my favorite, and I'll tell you why in a second. I just like to generate acceptance criteria in bullet points because I use Gherkin for the actual BDD specifications by example later on. So it's just easier from a usability perspective in my case to generate acceptance criteria in bullet points. Now, again, this is just a way of using the tool. Human beings have to be involved. So I would expect that your team would be here and you might be somebody on the team might be playing the role of the sidekick driver or the sidekick pilot today and generating some of these ideas while other people are in private mode generating their own ideas, however that might take place. So yes, I can send you all of the prompts that I'm using. Okay, so here come some acceptance criteria. And of course, it wrote it in Gherkin, even though I told it not to. Okay, so I'm just going to correct it. I asked for bullet points. This is so funny. Gherkin, please adjust. Okay, so I just want to see as we're doing this. Yeah, they can edit their street address, so it's coming up with some ideas, but hopefully now there we go. Right. So this is to me, this is so much simpler. They can edit their street address, they can validate, they can verify that country has not changed. It's going to log the change. That's an interesting one. Receive confirmation, right? So it's not bad as a start for acceptance criteria. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take Now, I just before I leave Miro, I'm going to go into Cursor now, and I'm going to start actually implementing this story and only one acceptance criteria to start with. We'll see how it goes. Does anybody have any questions about using Miro and using the sidekicks at all before I move on?
So Steve asked, do each of these artifacts get linked together somehow so there's some provenance for the integrity to this?
They don't. This is so I use Miro as a sort of free-form collaboration tool. If you obviously if you're using Jira or using ADO or some other tool, you would ideally you would link Miro to Jira or link to ADO, and it would actually create the items in those tools, and then you could have the sort of integrity and the all of that traceability. You could have it in there if you'd like. Now I will say this that. Yeah, I'm using the starter version. I will say this, that, and I'm going to show you this later. User stories were never intended to be requirements that would be traced and tracked. They were always intended to be just very small chunks of work that would help teams manage their work in small chunks that you would throw away when they're done. And what I'd like to show you as part of this demo is how I've used Cursor to generate use case specifications and diagrams that would be persistent and always aligned with the working code every time we create a new user story. So I'd like to show you that. So it's, yeah.
Barbara had a question here, I think.
Oh, was that the one about?
Hey, Dave. No, it's Barb. I
Yeah,
raised
hi,
my hand.
Hi.
Hello. Yvette Rhodes is on with me too, just to give you a blast from the past.
Nice.
We were talking, so we're not allowed to use Mural, but we're still using Mural. Does Mural have the same functionality as what you're sharing here, or do we have to ask if we can get into Mural again?
It's a good question, Barb. I have to say that I've noticed that Miro, I don't know if they've got some huge injection of cash. They've been leaping forward, especially with the AI stuff. I haven't seen the same capabilities in Mural. They might be getting them, but I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, being polite to AI. I've read that being polite to AI is costing trillions of dollars because it actually interprets the please and the thank you. I also got a report from somewhere, maybe it was Lovable, that told me that I was the most impolite AI user. I was in the bottom 99% or whatever. Anyway, I don't know. I'm doing it anyway. Yeah, and yes, you can choose the backend model. So let me see here. There's oh, that's not it. Where is it? There is a way, yeah, to choose the model. Yeah. So let me I'm just going to move on, and I'm going to take this user story, and I'm going to take another acceptance criteria, and I'm going to now move into Cursor to show you how to get started. So what I've done is I've cloned that repo that you all have a link to. I've opened up a little chat here with our AI, and I'm just going to give some context, and I'll make sure that I spend some time. And this is where this is where it gets kind of fun. I'm using some context here to help Cursor understand what I'm trying to do. I'm using BDD and TDD, create a hexagonal architecture CRM self-service product, one user story and one acceptance criterion at a time. I'm asking it not to write any application code yet until I tell it. And I'm starting off with saying I'll first give you a user story and acceptance criteria, and I'm asking it to ask me clarifying questions to ensure that it understands the needs. And then I'm being very clear because in the past I've noticed that if I don't tell it to use rest assured, it'll just start generating JDBC queries or whatever it starts to do, whatever the implementation that it wants. That's never my goal with BDD. I always want to create it as an outside-in test, not an internal test. That's what unit and integration testing is for. And here is the user story. And I've just got a different acceptance criterion that I just, because it's here, I want to be able to display the current business address. So let's see what kind of questions it comes up with. It's great at sort of showing this reasoning, and you can always go back to it too. And I agree with Steve. Mural doesn't seem to have the same features, and I'm happy not to be polite. Although some of yeah, unless it's Siri, and I don't use Siri. Okay, so it's just asked a bunch of questions. All right, scope of current business address, one canonical address per, and I'm going to, so remember, I've got like maybe another little half an hour to do this demo. So I'm going to answer these questions as simply as possible. So one address per customer is correct. I'm not going to have multiple addresses, so I'm just gonna answer the questions as they come up here. Street in all components, a single string. I'm going to say a single string street. And this, now you wouldn't build an application like this. I get it. This is very interesting because this is the same kind of conversation we would have during backlog refinement. State province, should it be optional? I'm going to say must be mandatory. All fields mandatory, and I'm just going to say freeform, just for now. And so this would all end up in your acceptance criteria in the end. Not yet set address. If they don't have an address, what should happen? So that, I think that is good. So 200 and 404 are good. 200 and 404, good. Whoops. API shape. API shape, I'm gonna, API shape is an implementation detail. Sort out later. This is exactly the kind of question that developers would ask, and a product owner might be expected to answer that, and there's not really a way for them to know necessarily. And I'll say no authentication for now. Okay, so let's see what it does. It might generate the feature file, or it might wait for me. So let's just see what happens. Okay, so good to hear that Zoom whiteboards are working like that. Yeah, you're right. All of these same problems. Here, the reason that I like using Miro for this is that it's if we're working with the team and everybody's remote and we're all working and we're all focused on this board and we're sort of collaborating, it's quite nice. Okay.
So it looks like my take on what you're doing here is it's asking you questions, which will do the exact same thing you do if you weren't using it. But do you find it accelerates it so it thinks of the questions before you do?
Yeah, it does. It does.
Okay.
Now look at this. It's gone to town writing an API test with rest assured.
Okay.
So I'm going to wait for it. I'm going to say, now it's probably going to do a whole bunch more stuff there. Yeah. Okay. So, let's undo all of that when using BDB. We are going to create a feature file first. So I hope it doesn't get mad that I've just.
If you tell a developer that, they probably wouldn't be very happy, right?
Well, they've okay, so if you tell a developer that, the developer's already coded this whole test, right? And, we can go over and find it here. There's the test, and how many lines of code is it? It's not insignificant, right? And so now let's see what it does here for this. And that's kind of what I was expecting. And I want to go in here. So it's deleting everything it did. It's gone. You can see that. And now, right, okay. So now we get to see whether it knows how to create a scenario in a feature file. So let me go over here and
Now,
right.
Michelle asked why you didn't use the stop button there.
Oh, I could have used. I did actually. I did press stop. It didn't
Okay.
respond quickly enough. Yeah, I did use it. Now, does anybody have any feedback about this feature file and this scenario? So this is abstract, not specification. This is exactly, I'm telling you, this is exactly the same kind of coaching that I would give a team. Please, well, okay, I'm using please again. Use an example address. And let's see how it changes it. So this, and I'm hoping that it's going to come up with a data table or something. There we go. Okay. Okay. So it's now and for those of you unfamiliar with behavior-driven development and Gherkin, we have our feature file that talks about our, what we're trying to achieve, and then we've got different scenarios that we want to test. So the current business address is displayed with all the components. This given, and this is very important to understand for all of you, when we write a given, which is a precondition, we are in control of setting up this given. So we're not going to expect that this is going to exist somewhere in some sample data in a database or whatever. We are going to set this data. We're going to actually persist this data in the database so that when the customer requests their current business address, the response is, we don't really need the technical detail of what the response status is, so I'll give it that feedback, but it's going to make sure that it brings back the exact same data that we had set up initially. And that might seem counterintuitive to you, but we want these tests to be completely self-contained. So I'm just going to ask it, I'm going to tell it we do not need the 200 response here. This is a EDD scenario from the user's perspective. Okay, so hopefully it'll correct that. And I'm just going to start writing here. I'm going to say, now let's set up yeah, there we go. Oh, and actually, it was very smart in some ways. But it just duplicated a whole bunch of stuff here. Okay, so this is exactly, there are duplicate checks in the scenario. And I'm going to ask it to stick with the I find the data tables to be easier to read anyway than a list of ends. Okay, so now I'm going to, let's set up and in Cucumber and Gherkin, we're going to set up the step def stubs now. Okay. Okay, so now it's completely, my correction has completely failed. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to copy this out, and I'm going to have to just correct this manually. Now, normally I wouldn't do this. Normally I would prompt it to correct.
It's probably because you're being too polite, right?
I'm being too polite. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna, let's set up the step defs. Now it should know, so over here in our, we've got our Cucumber suite, here's our step definitions. It should be changing the step definitions in here. Let's see what it does, yes. And so if you don't know how Cucumber works and how Gherkin works, what it'll do is for each of those given when then statements, it will create a little annotation that contains the English language, and then it'll create, hopefully, it created some new ones, business address test. So given this, when this, and then it's created some to-dos because it doesn't really know how to implement these things. So that's all good. That's the way it should be because we don't have any application code yet. So now I'm going to show you. So let's run the scenario. Let's just see what happens. It should work, but it'll just have a bunch of to-dos. And this is, remember I said in BDD, we've got the create a failing acceptance test and then make it pass. This is the failing acceptance test. So this will not really be successful. Okay, and as it's going, now I'm going to, this to me is the sort of secret sauce of all of this. Okay, so it's created a Spring configuration because it didn't have one, which is great. All right, so it's done that over here. You can take a look at it. And the step definitions. Okay, it's removed a bunch of stuff. And then here's the business. Okay, so it's going to run the test in just a second, and we'll see how it does. All right, so this is taking a while. It's interesting that there's more conversation in the chat about using the please and thank you than this. So it's interesting. I wish somebody would just come up with and say, no, don't do it. I'd be happy not to do it. But then I got in trouble from Lovable, I tell you, in my year-end review. Felt like I was not very polite. And I'm Canadian, so usually we're polite. Okay. All right. So it's running, and it should just tell me, oh, there's a failure here with Mockito. Oh yeah, there's some issue with yeah. Let's see what happens. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but sometimes it happens that there are little technical issues, and it might adjust and move away from using Mockito or something. Although Mockito isn't even in it shouldn't even be in the configuration. Okay. Oh, okay. So it's, oh, I see. Okay. So remember I changed manually, I changed the step definition. So now it's matching it, and then it's gonna try it out. Barb.
Just two questions, Dave. So one, how have you found the adoption of teams that you're working with to trust the AI?
Barb, this is I have not worked with any teams on any of this. This has been me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean this has been me on my own, sort of trying this out and practicing. And so okay. So for the discovery side, I will tell you that like my last engagement was mostly product discovery, and in fact I'm going to write a bunch of articles for product discovery. That is ideating solutions and then coming up with experiments to run to validate the assumptions behind the solutions and then getting prototypes built or fake door tests, and then testing with usertesting.com and using the AI to analyze the results and come up with clustering and things like that. That has been great. And I've worked with some really amazing designers to make that work. When it comes to coding, none of the clients that I've worked with have allowed their developers yet to do this, which is
Yeah.
it's a little bit sad, but it's it's happening. Now, I do want to share now the secret sauce here of all of this is what I'm about to show you next, because now we know we have a scenario, and now we want to do TDD, right? So you remember that in the middle of the hexagonal architecture is domain, and then we get use case, and then we get ports, and we get adapters. I'm asking it to create a checklist from the inside out to create unit and integration tests. So inside the application for the use case and for the domain, it's unit tests. The ports don't necessarily need tests, but the adapters generally do. But those are integration tests. So now what I'm waiting for it to do is create a checklist. And this is actually the secret sauce, because now it should come up with a checklist. It should be in our doc folder. Let's see if it happens. Well, we'll see where it generates it. Okay, so okay, let's create a document with the checklist and steps numbered. So it just, and this is again something, sometimes it does it like this, and sometimes it just generates it in the chat. So I never really know what's going to happen. But here now it's just generated in the docs. Right. So it's starting off with our business address value object, and that we can create it and it holds values. Two addresses with the same field are equal. I'm not really worried about that right now. Business address value object, two addresses are not equal. I'm not worried about that. So some of what it created is not super important right now, but let's start with a unit test for step 1, and I just in case it gets confused. Now what we should see is that it starts to create a unit test in here, and let's see how it does it. Business address test Java. It just created this domain folder, and here's the test. It's Main Street, Illinois, and it wants to create it with all 5 fields, and that it holds values. So now, has it created the application code yet? Hopefully not. Yeah, so checking compilation, the test references business address, which does not exist yet. So that's great. The test has just run red. Does not compile because, okay, so let's write the application code. Okay, so now we should start to see up in source main, we should start to see that it's going to start writing, it's going to create another domain. There we go. Here's our business address. And it's very basic, but it should run the test and the test should pass. Okay, so while it's doing that, okay, yeah, there, and it's got all the tests we can see. And I'm not going to do a quality inequality now because they're not important. It's sort of done. And one of the things I find with Cursor is when it runs tests on its own, it doesn't give you like a, doesn't have a great view of it. So what I do is I tend to go into, sometimes I run the test myself here, and you can see the test results come up. Oh. Yeah, and so you can see that the tests are passing here. Okay, so I don't know how far we're going to get in the next 15 minutes, but let's see if we can go through as many of these checklists as we can, and I'll focus on the ones that are important. So there's our domain. I'm not going to worry about the inequality, equality, one business address. Okay, let's write. It's interesting how it sort of reflects the user wants to write a test for step 5, and it's quite, all of its reasoning is there. Okay, so now it's written the customer test. And let me just go check it. It's funny, it actually put the step 5 in here as the name. That's interesting. So it's creating a new customer. Okay. It doesn't compile, it doesn't, right? So it's not passing. So let's make the test pass. And now we should see in the domain, we should see a new class be created. There it is, customer Java, and there it is. And we can sort of focus on what it's doing. Yeah, so it's a very basic class with a customer and then a business address, optional business address. So that's good. And now it's going to run the test. And I think there's a test missing because to make our, does anybody see in here a way to get, so we've created the address, but we haven't gotten it. That's okay. We'll keep going and we'll see. Now we're working outwards. So let's, yeah, here we go. Get the current business address. So let's do step 7. Now we're creating our use case. And then we won't worry about the not found yet. So I think you can see what's going to happen here. I mean, I don't know if we're going to finish, but we would keep going through. There's a REST controller, which is we're going to, this is our API endpoint. And then we've got persistence. So this is where we're going to save the data that we get. And then and then we'll go back and we'll be able to sort of run the scenario again, and we'll have enough code that will run it. But I don't know, Mark, if it makes sense to continue. I mean, I could keep going and going and passing all these tests, or if this is good enough, and then maybe we can take questions now. I don't know.
I think questions would probably be more. At least for me, I've got an idea of what I think I know what you would continue to do. So
Yeah.
the questions may be more interesting. And somebody was asking, let's see, Teresa asked if you're going to have like some of these prompts that they can share with them, or are you going to put them in the project?
I'll put them all in the project. I'll put them all in the project. Yeah.
Okay, so Teresa, I'll put that link in the chat just to make sure you've got that. Okay, anybody have any questions? thoughts?
Well, there's a question I see there about, I'd love to hear others on this, but to me, one of the huge advantages this manner is for new product ideas, quickly creating working prototypes. So Teresa, that's exactly, or Terrence, Terrence, that's exactly what I was talking about. Let me just stop. I could stop sharing for a little bit. It's exactly what I was doing in my last client. We were doing design sprints, and we would start off with getting the AI to help us frame the problem. And I don't know if anybody's done triangulation for problem framing before, but that's where we have different sources of data, both primary, our own users, and secondary sort of research done in the market. And we've got quantitative and qualitative data. The quantitative data might come from just our sheer numbers and what we're getting from our BI, and then maybe we've also got Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics. We've got behavioral data that's all quantitative. And then we've also got the research that our service designers and researchers are doing to come up with qualitative data, and putting all this data together into a tool like Miro and having it use its clustering enables us to triangulate. So we can pinpoint where we're confirming, because the quantitative data will show us what's happening and the qualitative data will talk about why. We start to see some patterns emerging, and we start to understand what our customers' problems are. And that helps us define problems in a way that nobody was ever able to do, at least in the customers that I was working with. And then we'd use the tools to come up with a great problem statement and come up with some sample success criteria. And then we'd say, let's start ideating solutions. And I don't know if anybody knows Teresa Torres and opportunity solution trees, but being able to go in and identify all sorts of potential solutions to opportunities. And then one of the things about discovery is we don't actually test ideas. We don't test solution ideas. We test the assumptions behind those ideas. And so, then we can start to say, what are the assumptions? What would make this, and again, we have human beings, maybe in Miro in private mode, coming up with their ideas for what the assumptions are. And I've got a tool that helps identify assumptions. And then we can also just be supplemented by using the AI for that. And I find that the combination of a team of human beings as well as AI, it comes up with, we generate some great assumptions, figure out which ones we have evidence for, so they're known, which ones we don't have evidence for, so they're unknown, which ones are critical for our product, and which ones are not so critical, and help getting AI to help us sort of come up with that categorization, and then identifying ways that we can test those assumptions, whether it's creating a prototype for value or for usability, or creating another kind of test, and then running those experiments in a matter of hours, like 2 or 3 hours, that might have taken us 2 or 3 weeks in the past. And so all of a sudden we're getting this rich feedback from our customers, and we can cross out some solutions right away. And then we know which ones are sort of, and we can keep iterating on the ones that are promising. And imagine you do that with enough, you do that enough, and you start to get real confidence that you're building something that your customers really want and can use. And then you use this approach that I just showed you to then build it very, very quickly. And yeah, we're talking about changing the pace of the work, and a lot of, I don't know, the long pole in the tent, I think it used to be sort of delivery work. Then it was sort of discovery work. People would complain, oh, we're doing discovery for months or whatever, and it always takes too long. Well, imagine if you can do that same work in a week and come up with a solution that everybody is confident is going to work, and then be able to build it in a very short period of time. It's for me, Dave Marsh, I feel like I'm a new software engineer again, like in my 20s, and getting to do all this. It's quite amazing.
One thing I noticed about what you're doing here is it feels to me like the difference between this and what I've seen presented as vibe coding. It feels like you're actually engineering a solution. So, with your BDD scenarios and stuff like that, that looks like a product that could continue to grow into a very large application.
Yeah.
Whereas some of the other things I've seen done in some of my experiments with using AI to write code is like, oh yeah, that works. And as long as this application never gets over 2,000 lines of code, I'm great.
Yeah.
But this is not enterprise level, last for the next 20 years stuff. But what you're doing here looks like it would head that direction if you keep having the discipline to do exactly what you're doing.
And you need to keep doing it. And you know, Mark, I'll say that I have another repo where I created like an accounting ledger, and I started doing some things because I'd never used idempotency before. I'd never implemented that. Well, I did it, and well, I did it. It was me and my friend Cursor did it, and so it was quite, something that I would not have been able to do in the past. I was able to do, and so and yeah, very very disciplined engineering approach to creating a secure and scalable product.
And not only did you get it to work, you understand idempotency now in ways that you didn't understand it before.
That's right.
Okay.
It's true. It's true. Yeah. So, and okay, so whoever wrote, the software design expert, this takes expertise. You have to know what you're doing already. And what I'd like to do, and this is not a plug or anything, but what I'd really like to do is I'd like to be able to take all my experience with software engineering and now product development and teach younger people how to sort of do this so that they can recognize when the AI is off doing something like hard coding a bunch of things, or missing a bunch of potential tests, and then get them to develop the expertise so that they can manage this AI in this way. I haven't even started. Like you can see, I'm not using agents or anything here. This is me directly working with the cursor, right? So yeah.
And David may not make it as a plug, but I will put in a plug for David. If your company is in a place where that would be useful to them, reach out to David and talk to him. Because I think if you look at some of the stuff like that IBM has done recently, they've just recently started going back and hiring entry-level developers again because they're changing the job descriptions. And I haven't dug into a lot of it, but I think what they're doing is basically exactly what David is describing here, of saying, we need entry-level developers, but we need to do different things with them than we did before. So if your company's in that place, reach out to David. He'd be a great person to talk to.
Yeah, no, I'd love to do that.
Any other questions or thoughts? How does this resonate with what you're seeing in your companies?
It's not the flashiest use of AI, but I think it's useful for me anyway.
I think when I think of some of the stuff I've seen with vibe coding, it feels like you've got the ability to build bridges very, very quickly, right? But you don't know how they're built. And so then the question is do you want to actually drive across them? And this seems to be the approach where we've got ways to build bridges very, very quickly, but we can still practice the engineering discipline behind it.
Yeah.
Is anyone doing anything like this? I'm just curious. In their companies, the kind of this very methodical approach to using AI, but still using all the, like, a very methodical way of doing things. So, okay, so we said they vibe code for UI and then pass off to actual UI UX developers. Okay. So David, how easy is it? Do you find it's difficult to keep? I'll say my experience. I'm wondering how you counter this then. When I've been doing some stuff with AI to generate code, it's very easy for me to start going, oh, it's just going to do it, and stop reviewing it because, to be honest, it's very, very accurate. And my it's easy for me to lose the discipline of keeping the mental model. Do you have tricks to do that? Or are you just like, it heads down the path to pain? Or
No, I mean, I've just seen, I've had the pain, right? I've seen it where it goes and it does, and then I've just lost it. Now I have no idea. Do we have enough tests? Has it gone off and written a whole bunch of because it was just doing it. I don't know if you saw it. It was just writing application code that I didn't want it to write. And so I find that I have to stay disciplined with it. And it doesn't necessarily mean that this is going to be super fast, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that, but it means that whatever we create, we know that it works the way we expected it to work.
Okay.
And we're going to continuously test, right, too.
So my experience with behavior-driven development is the secret
Mm.
sauce of successful projects has been being able to come up with very well abstracted backing code for that. So it's very easy to add new functionality. How do you
Yeah.
feel AI does like that? Like, can you guide it to that, or does it do a good job automatically?
Well, I'll tell you what, that hexagonal architecture really helps.
Okay.
I just find that separate, like having a clear separation of domain and use case, and then the ports and adapters. If you need to extend, like moving from H2 to a real database, is very easy to do with this, right? And
Okay.
then, yeah.
Steve asked, do you currently pair with CI/CD so you can have some local shared test automation?
Yeah, so all of my stuff is, yeah, so I just spoke with somebody about maybe getting a GCP account, and then because I do want to it's in GitHub it's got the sort of basic CI/CD and testing that happens, but I do want to build a pipeline so that I can be constantly testing on a server, on a development server.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
we are at the top of the hour. I'm going to throw the GitHub link there one more time if you guys want to grab that. David, you said you were going to put some of the prompts and stuff there if people want to go
I
in
will
and
do
play
that.
with them.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll do
Dave,
that.
thank you so much for coming. Very insightful. I really enjoyed it. I think everybody else benefited as well. And be watching. I've got an invitation getting ready to go out for next week. Also, be aware that in March we've got Troy McGinnis coming that's talking about using AI to, like, how to know if something's ready for AI.
Mm.
Ready to code with AI. He does a lot of work in like prioritization and making sure you've got work ready to move to the next stage. Anyway, it'll be another great session. So be watching for that. The invitation should have gone out. Get that on your calendar, and we'll have another one coming out a little bit later this week. But David, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Always a pleasure. And thank you everybody for coming. Great to see you.